Once upon a time there was a great lake, and on the banks of the lake there were some huts and some tents, a small village. And at the end of the huts and tents there was a smaller tent, and in the smaller tent there lived a father and his 3 daughters, 3 sisters. Well, they were not alike. Older sister, she was always angry. Middle sister, she was really mean. And younger sister, she was afraid of her sisters. She liked to keep in the shadows. She liked to keep away from her other sisters. She liked to keep quiet so they wouldn't hear her. But it didn't always work. Every day they teased her and they taunted her and they made her life really sad. And then one day when their father was away hunting, older sister, angry, called to little sister, "You," she said, "you come here, stand by the fire." And middle sister, meanie, she snarled and said, "Yes, you come here, stand by the fire, look into the fire now." And little sister came and stood by the fire and looked and leaned over it. And then angry and meanie, they counted 3, 2, 1. They blew into the fire. They blew the smoke into her face. They blew the hot red sparks into her face. And where they touched her skin, they left marks upon her. When father came home that night, he said, "Why does she look like this?" And angry and meanie said, "You have no idea, father. She's so clumsy. She tripped, she fell. We had to drag her out with our bare hands." But that night was the night that when everyone stood outside their huts and tents, when they looked up into the dark sky, they saw 2 bright, shining stars shoot across, settle on the bank of the other side of the lake. And then they saw a great rolling mist, shimmering, glistening, and it seemed to pause on the other side of the lake. Wow, no one had ever seen anything like that before. And then the next day when they all came outside, the mist had gone. But there in its place, there was a long, low lodge, like a great hut. But this hut shimmered white, like it was covered in pearls or shells. Who might live in such a hut as this? Maybe a great chief, or maybe a great warrior, maybe a god. And then they saw someone was coming towards them. Someone had come out of the lodge, was walking around the banks of the lake towards them. It was a woman. She was tall. She was dark. She was waving. She was calling out to them. She said, "We need help. We're looking for a friend. We're looking for a great companion, my twin brother and I. I'll be back later. If you'd like to come, you're all welcome." And then she turned and walked away. Oh, there was excitement. Well, everyone wanted to be a friend of someone who lived in such a lodge. Everyone wanted to be a great companion. Everyone went back inside. Oh, they were so excited. I'm going to wear my best, I'm going to put on my best, and my hat, and gloves, what do you think? Necklace, yes, crowns. They dressed up. And in the smallest tent, Angry and Meanie pushed. Little Burnt Face, they said, you stay there in the shadows. You won't be needing your... They pulled off her clothes. They left her shivering there in the shadows. And then they dressed themselves up, put on their best beads, did up their hair, plaits, belts, best dress, best shoes, polished their nails. Then they were ready. Out they went. They joined the crowd on the bank of the river. And already, twin sister, she was in her boat, and she was paddling across towards them. Plash, plash. She called out again. She said, do you see my twin brother on the bank behind me? Do you see him? And most of the people in the crowd, they just laughed. They squinted. They went, your brother? There's nobody there. We don't see anybody. Are you having a laugh? And she said, if you don't see him, then you are not the great companion that we're looking for. Go on, go home again. And they all turned round laughing and went away. Angry and Meanie, they stood on the bank. They nudged each other and they said, let's say we see him. Otherwise we look like fools. We see him. And twin sister paddled up to them and they stepped into the boat. And she started to paddle back again. She said, if you see him, tell me, what is his bow made of? Angry said, well, his bow is made of wood, isn't it? Well, if you see him, what is his sled rein made of? And Meanie said, sled rein? Sled reins are made of leather. Oh, said twin sister, then you don't see him at all, do you? And she paddled them back again to the bank. And when they stepped out, who should be standing there but little sister? And they hissed at her and they said, little burnt face, you shame us. You shame us to be standing here. And then they looked at what she was wearing. Little Burnt Face had gone into the wood. She'd stripped some bark from the trees. She'd softened it and then she'd stitched it up to make herself a dress. And she didn't have shoes, so she'd put on her father's shoes and they were too big for her. And she shuffled in them. When she'd come out of the little tent, all the others who had turned back had laughed at her and told her, go back inside, you look ridiculous. But little Burnt Face didn't care. She stepped into the boat and she sat down. I don't mind being seen, she said, and twin sister smiled at her. She started to paddle. Plash, plash. If you see my twin brother, can you tell me? Yes, said little Burnt Face. I see him standing on the bank on the other side. In his hand, he holds a rainbow. It is his bow. I see his sled rein. It's made from stars, plucked from the Milky Way. And twin sister said, then you do see him, and you are the friend we seek. You will be our great companion. And when they reached the other side, and when they'd all stepped out, the twins mixed up a potion, a lotion, and they rubbed it on the skin of little Burnt Face. And all the scars on the outside disappeared. And all the scars on the inside began to fade And when everyone stood outside their huts, their tents that night, and they looked up into the dark sky, they saw 3 bright stars shoot across the sky, and a great white glistening mist rolled after it.